Welcome to the Up Arrow Podcast with William Harris, featuring top business leaders sharing strategies and resources to get to the next level. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey everybody, William Harris here. I'm the founder and CEO of Element and the host of this podcast where I'm interviewing the brightest minds in e-commerce to help you scale from 10 million to 100 million and beyond with a little bit of life thrown in there for good measure. Excited about the guest that I have today, Brad Redding. In 2017, Brad co-founded Elevar, which automates data collection and server-side conversion tracking for thousands of Shopify brands. You can find Brad sharing his knowledge on YouTube, the Elevar blog, and his Conversion Tracking Playbook podcast. And I was thinking about who we were introduced by, and I don't think we were introduced by anybody. If I remember correctly, we just kind of rolled in a similar crowd and connected on LinkedIn and started chatting from there. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that's saw you launched the pod and was listened to the first couple episodes, saw a couple guests that I knew, and I reached out, said I need to get you on our pod as well, since you just have a wealth of information.
Funny you should mention that. I think we're going to do that in a little bit here, so that's pretty good. I'm excited. We've got that scheduled too. I do want to make sure that I announce our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Element. Element is an award-winning advertising agency optimizing e-commerce campaigns around profit. In fact, we've helped 13 of our customers get acquired, with the largest one selling for nearly $800 million and one that IPO'd recently. And we were ranked as the 12th fastest growing agency in the world by Adweek. You can learn more on our website at element.com, which is spelled ELUMYNT.com. That said, on to the exciting stuff. Why did you found Elevar? What was the thought behind this that made you say, this is what I want to start dedicating time and this is what the market needs?
Yeah, great question. Without turn this into an hour-long segment just on that, I started my first business, which was a SaaS business 12 or 13 years ago. That essentially was, back then, Etsy for independent boutiques and retailers. So think brick and mortar shops that didn't have online store. So I was a marketplace where I'd bring them online, and I have a two-side marketplace trying to find people who lived maybe in Iowa and they wanted to shop boutiques in New York City and make that whole process and connection happen. So in between that business and Elevar, worked at an e-commerce agency here in Charleston, South Carolina. And the point where Elevar originated was around, hey, we're doing a lots of repetitive data analysis. So think Google Analytics, trying to go in there and discover where are things going well, where are there opportunities to improve, and said that should be automated because that whole process takes a month by the time you pull the data, analyze it, present it to the brand reviews it internally, they come back, make decisions, you implement a test 30 days later, which is on old data, and that could exasperate over time. So that was really the initial Elevar product was, we're going to ingest a bunch of data, automate the analysis of it. What turned out was we'd get hey, we love your insights you're producing, but we don't trust the data that you're pulling from. We know our Google Analytics data is inaccurate for these 5 reasons. Therefore, we don't trust your insights. So that spurred the Elevar, as everyone knows it today, which is conversion tracking, data quality, data integrity. We started a separate Shopify app with the initial goal back then of, hey, let's launch this separate Shopify app to clean up the data, and then our analytics product will work as expected. And fast forward to today, that particular initial Shopify product became 100x, 1000x, whatever you want to use, more successful and valuable than the analytics product. So we shut that down roughly January 1st, 2021. And ever since then, we've been pretty much all in just on solving the problem of data accuracy and data integrity as we do today.
I love hearing that because that's a common theme among a lot of people that have been on this podcast, but just other founders that I've talked with, where there's this critical moment of a pivot where oftentimes what you started isn't what you finish with. And it's just interesting to see that you've got to be in the right spot. You've got to get started in order to pivot. You can't pivot if you never start. But once you start, even if it's not the right idea, sometimes, just getting moving and going, and then you find that opportunity to make that change. And you're being willing to make that change, and you go for it, and that ends up being the thing that just radically succeeds and takes off.
Yeah. That's I think it's pretty common. Like you said, I love you got to get started. You're not gonna build it and they will come. You just gotta get started and see what sticks and follow the customers.
Yeah, and I like the idea of making decisions off of 30 days late of data. I kind of felt like, man, maybe you can redo this for the Fed chair next. I feel like we're always making decisions economically based on stale data, and it'd be interesting to see a little bit more accuracy in that data, or expediency. So let's talk about this. One of the things you and I were talking about is just in the future, where are people going to go for in-depth analysis? UA is gone, and that's where a lot of people really that was kind of like their main spot. And then we saw a lot of pop-ups for other data companies now that have taken a place for multi-channel attribution. Where are we going to go for that in-depth analysis that we want to see in e-commerce?
Yeah, I would say just based on me talking to friends, colleagues, et cetera, I probably fall in the end of the spectrum that people may think I'm, I don't know, too optimistic or too crazy. But I remember last October speaking at the Vervant conference, and back then I was talking about the future of analytics, and part of it was, hey, AI is, you just look at the evolution of it the last 3 to 4 years, throwing in the Jasper and the Dolly and some of those examples. Sure. And this was before the massive AI revolution that's come out in 2023. I didn't have any magic. I didn't know what was coming down the line. OpenAI wasn't even released yet, or at least I didn't know about it, but it wasn't publicly released yet. But I was just following the breadcrumbs of, okay, it took 7 years for this to happen in AI, and then it took 1 year for this to happen in AI. Now it's taken 6 months for this image generation and what Jasper was doing. That to me means this technology is accelerating, and that is the same reason as I stand here today in 2023 is, I think a year to 2 years from now, what we see these technologies, I'll just use the buzzword AI without getting too specific in the types of models and all that, but I think we're going to see that evolve into analytics a lot quicker and user interfaces. I was on a call with one of the co-founders of Intercom a few weeks ago, and had the chance to listen to one of the brightest SaaS minds in probably in the last 20 to 30 years in SaaS, if not longer, and he was sharing his wisdom on where he sees it and the reasons why and all the validation, how they're building it into the future of Intercom. And it just really resonated with how I think of just, it's going to move faster. So that's the basis of my answer of, I think it's going to be even less manual and significantly more automated, likely voice prompted, and likely we will be told things that we won't even know what to ask. How that, what that looks and feels like, I can't answer that, but I do think it's going to be a lot less just me pulling up an analytics dashboard, and it's up to me to interpret and produce insights to pass on to an executive team or colleagues.
I think one of the things that I find interesting when you talk about that version of the future with this is that we've wanted this for a while, and we continue to get let down, I think, by the first versions or iterations of this. Even let's just say you talked about, we'll just be able to ask it versus even having to put in necessarily like a typed in prompt. In the first version of like Siri or Alexa, it was like, hey Siri. My kids even get frustrated. It's like, hey Siri, and they ask this really complicated question, and Siri is like, you can open your iPhone and I can give you some directions to a website that you can check out. And it's not able to do much. But I agree with you that the future version of this is radically different than what we see right now. But I'd imagine then, in order for this to be effective, there's two things that I see. One is you need to know the right questions to ask. And two would be you need the right data. You need to know that the data that you're feeding into this machine is accurate, timely, et cetera, right?
Yeah. 100% agree. And that, again, not to get too much in the buzzwords, so to speak, but the prompt engineering, knowing the right way to ask questions. I've even experienced it myself when I'm trying to use OpenAI or Bard. You can just get completely, not different answers, but you can get better quality answers and assistance if you just do a setup like, why am I asking this question? What's the context of the question? So I do agree that we will improve as in the human side of things of just being better communicators to let these machines help us faster and more efficiently.
And that's a good point, because I've got kids. I've got three daughters, 13, 10, and 7. And I think about what is the best thing that I can do to prepare them. And when we were young, when you and I were young, just having a computer and starting to play around with that was something that I think helped to set us up likely much better than somebody who didn't have a computer at that time, right?
Yeah.
Just being able to get online and mess around with it.
SimCity, right?
Yeah, SimCity, or even GeoCities if we go even before that. But yes, absolutely. But then I think about, okay, well, for them, for a while, it was this idea of like coding. It's like everybody needs to know how to code. Maybe that's not as important anymore. Now it's everybody needs to know how to communicate, because if you can't communicate what you want to be able to get this out, now coding can help because you're going to think logically, how do I get this output that I'm trying to get out of this? But I almost feel like there's this need for better understanding of how to get what you want. And it reminds me of The Notebook, the movie, when I don't even remember the character's name, right? But like the guy's like, what do you want? What do you want? And I feel like sometimes that's what AI is asking us. It's like, what do you actually want? Because you're asking a question, but you're not maybe asking the question that you wanted to ask. What are the questions that we should be asking? Not just AI, but when we're even looking into our own dashboards now, what are the questions we need to start to learn to ask, to look for in our data?
Since we live in analytics, and my core skill set and passion is in data analysis and how that turns into conversion optimization or business optimization. And it's very easy to, you open up analytics in a Monday, Tuesday morning, and you just start surfing. You just start like surfing the web or doom scrolling social. You just start surfing analytics or your attribution tool, whatever it might be, without having a goal in mind. And that's where I go back to when it comes to reporting and what to look at is start with what's the questions that you are truly trying to answer. And even taking a step back from there, whether you're the business owner or the executive or the marketing team or the director or the individual contributor, is what's the company theme for that quarter, for the year? What's most important? So if it's an e-com, is it new acquisition or is it profitability? And then break down, okay, what are your quarterly rocks and quarterly themes? Okay, it's moving this particular product. They're hitting certain margins on this particular category, whatever it might be. And then you break that down further into, okay, well, what are the data points or what are the questions I need to ask myself to help me bring answers or insights back to those quarterly rocks that roll up to the theme, and somewhat like leave everything else to the side. Focus on the core questions that roll up to those themes, the quarterly themes, annual goals, etc., and focus there first.
I've heard it said before, and actually Goldie Chan, who was on this podcast, did an article about the power of asking why, or the power of questions, I think. And then one of the things that I talked about was, the best question to ask is why, and just keep asking why. And I think to your point, or what, just keep getting to the level, well, why is that important? Well, why is that important? The question that you brought up with what's more important, new acquisition or profitability? Because those are two very different things, right? And if you understand that, we ask our clients that same question all the time, where it's like, what is your business goal? If it's EBITDA, then we may approach it from a very different perspective of what we're going to do within your ads account. If it's new acquisition, more than EBITDA, and you always want both, but there's a balance between them, then we may go, with this approach to how we're going to grow the business. But I think that to your point where it's like, okay, great, ask why, then ask why again, then keep asking why until you get to the root of that problem. And then you now know, okay, this is what I'm trying to solve. Now I have a better chance of asking the right question. Yeah.
Have you ever done that to yourself, by the way, of like, why did I start this business? And I was doing this in a car ride. I was driving back from Atlanta from a mastermind a couple of years ago. And I was going through this exercise and I just kept asking why, to get to, maybe it was the final answer, but you can go an hour, you can go a couple hours just continuing to ask why. It is a very thought-provoking exercise if you've never done it just for yourself, let alone the business.
I completely agree with you. And I'd say, especially on, let's even say like psychosocial, emotional type things that are going on. Okay, you're upset. Why? Why are you upset? Well, because of this, this, this. Well, why does that bother you? Well, because of this is this. Well, why does that bother you, right? And so it's like you can get to the root, and you're like, you're not actually upset about that email that client sent or your boss sent or whatever. What you're really upset about is this thing that's 4 or 5 levels deep that has nothing to do with that email, but that email just happened to trigger something else that was going on. And I think there's a lot of power in, like you said, asking why from a business sense, from a professional sense, from a personal sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if we want to get better at asking the right questions, so that way, let's just say when we're at the point where we have the opportunity, AI is at the point, machine learning is at the point where we can get better and we can use this now. Do you have any tricks for how, aside from asking why, for how to identify what it is that you're actually trying to ask? Or maybe you've identified it, but being able to actually ask it correctly. Have you experimented a lot with different prompts within AI currently, ChatGPT or anything like that, and found some things that have helped you get better at that?
Yes. However, it has nothing to do with technology. It just has to do with speaking and communicating with each other. Have somebody, if I'm the person that is tasked with coming up with the questions to ask, you would interview me, ask me, you would go through the process of, okay, what's important in Q4? Whether I'm going to make up some questions on the fly, but do you have a particular profit margin? Are you getting into conversion optimization? Are you launching any new features or products or whatever it might be? And just, you interview me, and then that will expose the ultimately the 3 to 5 to 10 top questions or data points or reports or metrics that we need to be looking at for the business.
I love that. As far as, refining what I ask ChatGPT or Midjourney, I found that it's like, okay, I might have something now in my mind, but I don't ask the right question. There was a guy who was on the podcast here, Chad Rubin, started an Amazon profit optimization company called Prophecy. And he turned me on to this tool. It's a Chrome extension called AIPRM. It's a really good tool because it just helps you create a lot of different prompts a little bit differently. But one of the tricks that I found that's the most interesting is just asking ChatGPT itself how to do it. So, for instance, you can use ChatGPT to make your prompt for Midjourney better. How would I ask Midjourney to do this? And you can use that as a way to basically say, how do I get this output the best that it could be? Or you could ask ChatGPT, hey, if I need you to do this, what things should I tell you or ask you? And it's actually very helpful at helping you think through how to create the best prompt possible.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great tip. I would imagine most are not doing that. Most are not leveraging the tool to ask them how to do it. So that's a great one.
But it goes to, like you said, relationships. If you're trying to improve your marriage, how about asking your partner what you can do to do a better job? What do they expect? Hey, I want to make sure that you feel loved by me. What can I do to make sure that you feel loved by me? What are things that I do? Right. And it just makes sense to ask the source of what you're trying to get to.
Yeah.
So let's switch from prompt side of this. So we said there's two things. One is understanding what to ask and asking it in the correct way. But the other side of this is having the right data in place. And I feel like this is another thing that a lot of people are trying to solve. There's a lot of companies out there that are doing different pieces of this. But how is Elevar helping to make sure that people have the right data in the machine so that the machine is finding and exposing the correct insights?
Yeah, I like to answer this question using the jobs to be done framework. Not that this is perfect by any means, but we have 2 jobs. Number 1, every destination, i.e. a Facebook CAPI or Google Analytics or Klaviyo, Intensive, Google Ads, et cetera. Every destination that is connected inside of Elevar, our job is to send 100% of conversion events to each of those destinations. A conversion can be a purchase, it can be an add to cart, it can be a page view, it can be an email sign up, but that's job number 1. We need to collect and send 100% of conversion events to each channel. Now, if we didn't do job number 2, those events in each destination would be worthless. You'd have 100% direct none in GA, you'd have 0 reported ROAS in Facebook, and you'd have no emails that get sent out in Klaviyo. So job number 2 for us is to send, along with each event, the maximum amount of session, attribution, customer, product, and order data. So each channel can A, report more accurately, and B, operate more efficiently. So many of these platforms, Facebook, Google, the big apps, they rely on this data as part of their bid algorithm. You probably know this when you get into estimated action rates with Facebook or Meta, and that's part of the process. And when it comes to Klaviyo or Tentive, or what I like to call more of the direct, like the quote unquote direct marketing, is if they don't have an email or some sort of identifier to associate with the event, then those emails are not connected to a profile. So those are the 2 main jobs that we focus on. And there's plenty of headwinds out there that's will be our core focus for quite a while.
Well, like you said, plenty of headwinds. I would say in theory, it sounds very simple, and it is. The 2 jobs we've done make perfect sense, but absolutely everything seems to be fighting against that right now. And at the core leader of that pack was Apple with iOS 14. Which just crippled a lot of what that was being done natively from different things throughout the Pixel and stuff. And, we've gone through several versions of this then. So 15 came out with a lot of stuff that impacted email and everything. iOS 17 is coming out soon. And by the time that this launches, it may already even be out. What are some of the things that we need to know from the iOS 17 side of things, and how this impacts, let's say, 2 people? One, first, merchants who aren't using a tool like Elevar, and then how does Elevar help to still bring that data back to help people?
Yeah. So I'll touch on the first part of the question. Is it seems easy to do those 2 things, and that's why we see more competition coming in the market. But that's one layer of the onion. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of layers. Like, go ahead, you can try it. Competition is great, by the way, but it is interesting to see more folks come in like, oh, the API docs are public for Meta. We can just start sending data there. Okay, great. Well, it's not like, it is easy, but it's not simple. I could go on all day explaining the nuances on why. The second part on the why Elevar. So I look at our primary competition are the 98% of stores that are using the native channel that's owned by Facebook or Google Ads or Klaviyo, et cetera. And for many of the same reasons why most brands that are scaling, like in your 10 to 100 million, they're using Klaviyo or SendLane because the native email isn't efficient or give them enough flexibility or power for email and SMS automations. Or you're using Yotpo or Okendo or other Stamped for reviews and loyalty and UGC. You're not, instead of just the native reviews app for Shopify. So I think that is something that it's easier for us to use as an anchor, because most everyone has these core products they're using for the business, and whether it's flexibility, accuracy, power, automation, all of those things combined are the same reason why brands are looking to Elevar or others like us in the space, is they just have unique needs around tracking. And and notably, Shopify doesn't own any of these apps anymore. So it's not a quote unquote native Facebook app. It's actually developed and maintained by Facebook and by Google, et cetera. So they're not Shopify owned features anymore.
Yeah. I remember running into this as well when I was at Sellbrite, which for those who don't know, Sellbrite helps you with your listings across different platforms. So you may have listings on Shopify, Amazon, et cetera. That was bought by GoDaddy. And what I remember then, there were some native integrations that came up from Shopify that helped natively integrate with Amazon or eBay or whatever. And when it first came out, I remember thinking, oh, this kind of stinks because it's kind of dipping into the toes of what we do. But when you looked at it and you compared what it could do versus what Sellbrite could do, it was night and day difference. It wasn't even in the same sandbox. And I think to a point, Shopify's main function, and I want to say that Harley said this, was their goal is to make this, to do everything that they need to do well, but then nothing else, right? Like to a point, like let's make it so that way. If you're trying to sell on Amazon, you could do it, and it's going to be there. It's got the capability, but then have this set up as a framework set way, whatever else you want to do. So at the basic level, it's simple and easy to use, but then you have all the complexity that you need to implement as well. And so if you're saying, hey, the native integration is no longer enough for me, I can go use Sellbrite to help with my listings. I can go use Elevar to help improve the data that I'm sending from Shopify to Facebook, to Google, to TikTok, to whomever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you nailed it.
What's beyond 17? Well, what are some of the problems that we're going to have to run into with iOS 17?
Yeah. So the main, maybe just a quick TLDR, and for those that may not be aware of iOS 17, even if it's out after this, there's a particular part of it which is called link tracking prevention. And a link, think a query parameter, so a question mark with a bunch of UTM or click IDs after the end. So there currently is a list of click IDs that, as part of this link tracking prevention, that's being removed or stripped. And then there's a whole bunch that are not touched. So let's start with the ones that are not currently being touched as of the day of this recording, because there is a lot of confusion out there. UTM parameters, so UTM source, UTM medium, those are not being removed. Klaviyo click IDs or SendLane click IDs, those are not being removed. The primary ones that are being removed, and it's a very arbitrary list. It's kind of odd, like the mixture of ones. There's a couple of Wicked Report click IDs, the Facebook click ID, the G click ID, but not all the Google Ads click IDs. So some of the newer click IDs that rolled out with iOS 14, those aren't on the list. Again, so it's weird and likely to change. But the long and short of it is, let's talk about the Facebook click ID and the G click ID. Facebook click ID, any link, so anytime someone's clicking a link, whether it's an ad or a link within the Facebook or Instagram or any of Meta-owned properties, the Facebook click ID is appended to that URL. So if you click an ad and you go to your site, it's going to have that Facebook click ID. That is then set as a cookie. So the value of the Facebook click ID is set as a cookie. So now in your Facebook integration, whether you're using Elevar or others that support this, if someone views a product or adds to cart, you are sending that event back to Meta with the Facebook click ID value. That way, when Facebook receives it, it's like one of the only IDs that Facebook generated it and they're getting it back from activity, they can match. So that's a large part of their matching formula, even though they have it like listed 5th or 6th on their user matching parameter forced ranking, whether that's true or not, who knows. So if you remove that, it is one of the data points that Facebook will no longer have to match user activity on your site to add impressions or clicks on Meta platforms. So is this going to affect 100% of traffic at the point iOS 17 rolls out? No. Will it be in the future? I bet yes. At some point, it's clear that's the direction they're going in. But for now, it's impacting private browsing. So anyone who's using private browser, or if in your settings, you've chosen to have that setting applied to all browser sessions, whether you're private or not. So that to me, that's kind of like hidden one. People are underestimating it. Again, I'm wrong more than I'm right, but I think it's going to be a higher percentage than just people going in private browsing. And then links shared or opened in SMS or email, or Apple Mail. And Apple Mail is 50+% of traffic. So that's could be a pretty big percentage. So that's I'll pause there. But to me, the so what is a even bigger importance put on other user matching data to send to Meta and other platforms that they need that data to help match activity to ad views and clicks.
Yeah. And I think that this is going to continue to be more and more that way. Like you said, this is clearly what Apple is intent on doing. Google is joining in on this to some degree. Mozilla already had a lot of things that it was doing from a privacy perspective, Brave as well. And so there's been more and more of a push towards this, but Google or Apple decided to take it up a notch and really just stick a sword in our side a little bit here. Where is this going? iOS 18, 19, 20, do you see any type of like a future or an end goal in mind for this?
Long term, I see a lot of the privacy or availability to data being through the browser. So browser APIs that, again, whether this happens or not, this is just a very easy example of, instead of going to 10 different websites in a session and all 10 websites have 10 different consents, like accept or deny or selecting your cookie preferences, that's not going to, no, it's not going to be up to the individual brand to own that. That's going to be at the browser level, where you select those settings once, and then that applies to all of your browsing. It's really ultimately what the app tracking in iOS 14.5 was. So I see that moving out to browsers. Again, that's just, I don't know. I don't have any insider information on that per se. But even seeing some of the sandbox developments that Google's been rolling out, it's been very like browser API based. So I see that. In terms of more tactical things with iOS and WebKit as part of the Apple umbrella, I think the days of the cat and mouse of they roll out an update and it's a race to see what platform or solution can come to a workaround. Oh, we're going to do CNAME cloaking because they're not doing that. Oh, we're going to do quad A name cloaking because Apple's not looking for that. I think that game is nearing an end, and Apple will just put a stop to that, which will put more emphasis on solutions like us as well as brands to work more with the platforms versus, again, just trying to look for hacks around it. I realize it's kind of like not a specific answer, but I think anyways, I'll shut up and let you go.
No, well, and I think it is a fairly specific answer, other than the fact that you're apparently not summoning the ghost of Steve Jobs to find out more insider information. It seems like the writing is on the wall. And one of the best ways to get around it, we had Matt Barr, he's the founder of Fairing, on. Literally just ask people. There's nothing that's preventing you from asking people, where did you find us? And that's another really great data point to use. And we like to use GL holdout tests. So let's imagine you have zero data coming back. If you run it in these states and you don't in these states, what's the difference? How much of a difference in there? And so there's a lot of ways where it's like you take what you've got from an Elevar, you take what you've got from customer surveys like Fairing, you take what you've got from a geo holdout, you take what you've got in the platforms, and you start putting this together. And now you get a little bit more of a fully complete picture instead of relying on one individual source or another as being, the absolute perfect shining star of all data that could possibly be.
Yeah. I could go off on a tangent on this one because I immediately go to the small brands, small businesses where they don't have the budget to do the wait and see. So is it okay? Do you have to start defining cohorts in a different way or primary cohorts within these channels and say, this is our ideal customer profile, and let Facebook or whomever figure it out? And, or is it, anyways, I can go off on a tangent, but it's the thinking through what would I do if I could not send any data whatsoever to Meta or others? It's probably a very scary prospect for most, because it's going to be a lot of generic advertising from big box, like big, the big spenders versus very specific.
Yeah, absolutely. It's who's willing to outspend the other, and it's not going to be the local store that outspends the big box retailers.
Yeah.
I want to shift into a little bit about who is Brad Redding, because I think it's fun to get into the personal side of everybody that comes on the show. Let's start with this one. What do you fear?
I have a never-ending fear of failure. And it's funny, the whole why question when we were just talking about that a little while ago, that was getting down into my, like, I wasn't necessarily bawling my eyes out, I was driving, but it was getting into like, why do I care so much about proving people wrong and the fear of failing, so I'm not able to prove people wrong. And so I think that's, to me, the fear is, maybe it's I've matured a little bit over the last couple of years, but very much fear of failure, but fear of failure that, there are some chips I have my stacked on my shoulder where I use them as motivation, which healthy or not, I think it's been healthy for me. And so the fear is around getting to a certain point where I fail to, at least in my own head, say I won, F you, see you later.
I wish I could remember who said this. It was talk about doom scrolling. I think just doom scrolling through TikTok, which a lot of people have apparently very disappointing TikTok algorithm. But mine is very nice, and I get a lot of motivational stuff, and I really appreciate it. And so there was somebody that showed up that talked about how I believe it was somebody in the military, one branch of the military, maybe the Navy, almost looks to see if there was any kind of, let's say, emotional trauma as a child before they decide whether or not they're going to take them to be, the elite level or whatever. Because they said that the biggest common denominator that it had for people that make it to the top is some type of emotional trauma that basically forces them to say, it's I will succeed. I can't not succeed. And so not saying you should go out and inflict emotional trauma, but at least to a point, maybe giving people who are parents wondering whether or not they're doing a perfect job or wondering what they're screwing up their kids. If you're intentionally trying to do the best job that you can as a parent, know that you will probably do something that is not optimal. And in some way you may end up ruining that child's life, quote unquote. But those emotional scars can be the catalysts for some really, really good things too. That said, when I at least call out the caveat that, there are some things that need professional help as well. So this isn't saying that, but there's an element of something in us that says, I will not fail at this. I will figure out a way to succeed. Yeah.
Wise words. And I have a 3 and 4 year old boy now. So I do find myself teetering on that. When do I push versus when be hard versus soft, I guess, to even put it more bluntly. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay. Speaking of the tough parts of the job of life and the job itself, how do you deal with the stress of running a business that is constantly being attacked by Apple and others? But how do you deal with that stress?
This has been a organic and evolving answer, and I think I've learned a few things. One, focusing on the process. So it's the day to day, the week to week, the month to month, the year to year, versus some sort of end mission. So there's no end. It's the infinite game. So how can I build a life that I never want to retire from? And that, again, it becomes easier as you hit certain milestones in building a company. But I do fall back on, focus on I need to enjoy the process, because there's not a magical, you walk through these doors at the end and everything's perfect. So that's been one that's helped me. Another one is keeping a healthy balance of, yes, there's a time when you got a GSD and you got to work 80 hours and you got to do the sweat equity and all of that. But after you get through that point, health is wealth, or another phrase, bank accounts and belt buckles. So belt buckles go down and bank accounts go up. So I think also focusing on being healthy, both as individual, but also as a family, that will ultimately helps me perform better in my career and profession. And just, there are some very easy things like lifting weights or doing a race or doing competition. It's going to de-stress. It's going to naturally de-stress. So I think those are probably the two things. The third one, which is probably first on the list, is having amazing people. So building a business with a culture that allows me to learn from so many people that are just extremely skilled, and get out of the way and let them execute. And the last point there is, it's also my job to ensure that I build a vision for our company and communicate that vision that is big enough where anyone that wants to come work at Elevar, all of their dreams can come true under the larger umbrella. So it's one massive umbrella. That's the vision. Others that come in, they have their vision for what they want to achieve. I want to be sure they can see achieving their own goals and dreams underneath the umbrella of Elevar. So that's like the soup, the different ingredients off the top of my head with this one that has served me well over the last few years and not have me stressing out too much.
Those are three very, very good ones. And shout out to Simon Sinek. I know you mentioned The Infinite Game, and I know he's got a great book about that. So that's something that I've had to deal with as well. You know, I was good at school. A lot of people maybe said that they weren't. I got A's. I enjoyed school. I did very well in a finite game. And to a point when you leave that world where all of a sudden, you know, an A is not the best you can get. There's an infinite level above that. Infinite number of players that are coming in. The rules are changing. It can be a little bit tough to figure out how do you enjoy the process instead of this destination. It's like, well, I got the A. I put in the effort as much as I needed to put in to get the A, which might have been less than somebody else or more or whatever.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of Simon Sinek, what about any books or podcasts that you love? You know, any good quotes or anything that you can think of that are things that you hold true to, you know, who you are or just life in general?
Yeah. So books, I read a lot. But I also, I would say this might just be feedback for anyone listening. I've also learned over the last 3 to 5 years of if there's a particular problem or challenge that I'm facing, I want to find the top 2 or 3 books on that topic and go really deep, stack them. I want to stack the books and education to get different perspectives and viewpoints and go really deep. For example, if you think about product management, so SaaS product management, product-led growth, what's April Dunford's book? Gosh, it's I'm not gonna be able to think of it.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank on that awesome. Right now too.
I'll have to Google it. So she has an amazing book, and so there's stacking 2 or 3 of those, reading those together. Ones that I tend to fall back on and reread are Dale Carnegie has 1 or 2 that I really like. How to make friends and influence people. How to
win friends and influence people. Yeah, I was talking to my 13-year-old about it just the other day, right? It's like just understanding the concepts of that.
Yeah. The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham. That's another one. I have not read that
one or even heard of it. That sounds interesting.
That one's really good. It's one of those books where it's every chapter is like its own book, so you can pick it up and just read. I usually have a couple that I'm reading. I'm rereading Influence right now. That's another good one, oldie but good one. I maybe some more newer books. I actually really enjoyed Shoe Dog by Phil Knight from Nike. Yep. Buy Back Your Time, Dan Martell. Yeah, I could go. There's a lot of different ranges, but I think
these are all good. There's not a single one other than the one that you just said that's new to me. I got to go look up, but I think I've read all of these as well. And to your point, like I like that idea of stacking though. I don't know if I've ever read it that way, but stacking the skills and learning really deep at one time on a specific subject seems like a very smart idea.
Profit First and Simple Numbers. That's another one. So that was early, like just trying to get finances in order to the business. I read those 2, and I think Think and Grow Rich is another one.
Napoleon Hill.
Yeah. So it's stacking those together and put a framework in place. Again, Profit First and Simple Numbers, they have a different perspective, but if you, at least for me, I was able to take the best out of both and implement that, which has been served us well.
I love it. What about any kind of quirks or superhuman tricks? You can, roll your eyes in opposite directions or anything like that.
I don't, but there's a story from a mastermind last year I was at. And so it was, 20 or 30 other SaaS founders. And we were at dinner. Drinks were flowing for some at this lower table. And everyone was going around the table sharing some sort of like, what's something quirky that you can do that, just weird. And it was the last person at the table. And the guy said he could shoot milk out of his eyeballs.
Oh, gross. Did he?
Yes, he did. He did. I won't call him out to say who it was, but yeah, I think it was like, It was either the milk either made its way through his nose or his mouth. But yes, he stood up and he was shooting milk out of his eyeballs. It was the weirdest, craziest thing that all of us have ever seen. Obviously, the mic was dropped at that point, and it was hysterical. I didn't know it was possible.
That takes the cake. That's pretty impressive.
And he said, he goes, I used to do this back in college, and he's in his mid to late 40s. He goes, I haven't done this in probably 20 years. But yeah, I used to be able to do this. And then everyone was like, cajoling him to do it. And he's like, I'll try it. And then, he did it.
Like riding a bicycle, apparently you can always shoot milk out of your eyes once you learn.
Yeah, exactly.
What about, earlier you and I were talking about just health and longevity, Dr. David Sinclair. Why is that something that's important to you?
Yeah, good question. So the easy answer is my wife works at MUSC, the Medical University of South Carolina. And unfortunately, I get to hear some of the just horror stories where, someone who's 30 years old that they were diagnosed with stage 3 or stage 4 cancer, and if they'd only found out 6 months ago, then they would have been able to catch it. And the amount of lives and families that are impacted is just, man, it's so sad. And that is I think it's grown into a passion of mine of, if I could just snap my fingers and create something, it would be, think about the infrared lights, where you just, before you go to bed, you just sit in front of these infrared lights, not literally infrared, but something that just scans your whole body and will pick out like, oh, that looks like something that you might want to get checked out. And I think part of this is as we age and we get older, I've shared this publicly on my LinkedIn. It was a story about a High Rocks event I did last year. But when I turned 41 now, when I turned 40, I had more EKGs hooked up to my heart, my chest that year ever. Everything's fine. I've gone through every stress test. I work out like crazy now, but there are things that I was just feeling and it didn't feel normal, and had a few AFib episodes. And again, all like is healthy. I don't have any known issues, and I got a lot of tests, but that I think turning 40 didn't help, and having some of that pop up, having 2 young boys where I started to mature more, like, okay, it's not just about me and my life anymore. It's about them. I want to make sure I'm there healthy for them in 20, 30, 40 years. So I think that those 2 or 3 things really started to drive me into, I need to educate more outside of business and focus more on health, because the last 17 years of my life has been focused on GSFDing and building businesses and trying to achieve this, this dream of success in a business. And so that put me down the path of, Lifespan, the podcast by David Sinclair. Listen to all those. Peter Attia, Outlive, the book. I've done the full body MRI scans. I've shared videos of that and results of that on LinkedIn as well, just trying to share openly and transparent for others that might be thinking about it, which was crazy. The amount of people that reached out were like, I've been thinking about doing that. Thank you for sharing. And all the blood work, like getting blood work every 6 months, and just diving deep on that. And just to maybe put a bow on this one, I think there was a chapter or a few excerpts in the book Outlive that when you read it, you're like, oh yeah, that actually does make sense. Like, if you can just go test yourself to find these things, even if there's nothing, why not just do it? It's like, just do it. Would you rather not know and you find out that you do have something that's like a very serious medical condition where you're not guaranteed? And I got to share this. It was crazy to me, the amount of friends like in my circle, after they saw me get the MRI scan and share results and share why I was doing it. And they're like, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to find that? Wouldn't you just want to find out? And I was like, hell effing no. Like, I almost had to defriend them. Like, I'm on the same wavelength as you anymore. I'm like, I'm living to 120 and I'm going to be kicking my boy's butt in sports in 40 years. And I want to keep doing what I'm doing now for a long time.
Yeah. I'm with you. Love a lot of the stuff that Dr. David Sinclair talks about. So 2 and 1 through 7, mTOR and things like that. As well as Andrew Huberman. Peter Attia. I actually am friends with the guy who runs Peter's podcast. He's actually local here in Minnesota.
Oh, nice.
There's so much out there right now that's turning things up on their heads, where we can actually look at longevity as not just some pseudoscience, but we're starting to understand a lot of what's going on there.
Yeah.
If you were going to give, outside of the testing,
Yeah.
one or two tips that you have found that, at least for you, seem to be the best for helping you improve your health and longevity as a busy business owner who maybe finds it hard to eat healthy and work out the way that you would like to. What are those one or two things that you've been able to implement in your life? You're like, look, if you can only implement these two things, at least start here.
Oh man, I'll answer, but it's one of, these are always the personal questions where people have their own,
100%.
Potentially what they want to hear or not. So for me, I don't care how busy anyone, including myself, is. Not exercising, both for aerobic and strength training, that is a choice that you make. That is not a result of your circumstances. Mm-hmm. Anyone can choose to wake up a little bit earlier or go to bed, not watch Netflix or do whatever you're going to do at night and not exercise. So that to me is that's a given. I've been fortunate where I've done that for my entire life. Pretty much. I've always exercised. Many benefits. I have my wife, she loves exercise too. So it's very natural for both of us. So that's number one. The other, this is kind of a weird quirk, but years ago, I saw some ad. It was like, oh, if you drink a gallon of water a day, then you look younger by 10, 20 years. And I was like, oh, I want to look younger. So I've been drinking a gallon of water for 20 plus years. It was a joke when I left the agency here. I would come to work in the morning with a gallon of water, and I would finish it before I would leave. So one of my gifts when I left there after 5 years is someone actually bought me a legitimate gallon jug versus the milk jug.
Oh yeah, nice.
I think the water, to me, that water is another one where hydrating, like just great hydration, has served me very well personally for many, many different reasons. More recently, I've definitely got on the cold and hot train. I did. Again, as you get older or you age, you get more, and you exercise hard, you get more, your knees ache or injuries don't heal quite as quickly as possible. So I did the cryo. I started doing cryotherapy a couple years ago. Was doing that regularly to try to heal this injury because nothing else would heal. That actually, whether that worked or not, or was just timing. But so now I'm definitely very much the heat and cold therapy. So infrared sauna, cold therapy. And eating, by the way, the other same comment goes for nutrition as well. The same thing I said about exercise, that is a choice. Bad nutrition, it's what is in front of you on a plate. I think for at least my family, my goal is not for someone to look at what we're eating and say like, oh man, that's really healthy. It's like, that doesn't even come up. It's just natural. Like what we're eating is natural. I realize that's not always available for everyone, but like I'm a very plain eater. Sweet, like what we had last night, sweet potato, broccoli, and salmon.
Nice. I appreciate even just the way that you said this about these are choices, right? You get to choose, and for the most part, nothing is standing in the way of you getting some type of workout in, or you making some really good conscious effort towards what you're eating. Mm-hmm. And I think that is one of the biggest keys for everything in life, is that so much of life, it really does come down to like, there are choices that you get to make every day. And if you don't like the situation that you're in, choose something different.
Yeah.
Don't continue to choose to do the same thing that you're doing, the same thing that somebody else is doing that's not resulting in what you want.
Yeah.
Choose differently.
Yeah. I had, my dad won't be listening to this, so he won't be able to give me crap for it, but I was over there yesterday and, just complaining about a couple things. And I said, Dad, do you want to hear some words from a wise man, your son? And of course he's rolling the eyes. And I said, you know what, the day that I learned, and I believe this to my core, nobody owes me anything at all. nobody owes me anything and I should never expect anything from anybody. I live that, and that just removes so much potential stress, worrying about, I gave that person something, why'd they say thank you? Or I didn't do this and they say thank you, or this person cut me off, what the hell? It's just like, nobody owes me anything. And yeah, well, TBD whether that'll kick in with him or not.
Brilliant though. I could go on this topic for the rest of our entire next episode. That said, I do want to wrap up here. If people want to find you, they want to work with you, they want to follow you, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
LinkedIn. Yeah, Brad Redding, LinkedIn. That's really where I spend most of my social time these days.
Sounds good. All right. Well, Brad, I appreciate you coming out here, sharing your knowledge, sharing your wisdom with everybody here.
Thanks, William. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And quick disclaimer, I think too, we're not practicing any medicine here. Do your own research. This is just for fun and what's working for us.
Kudos.
See ya. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Up Arrow podcast with William Harris. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.